The Hogwarts Legacy hype train continues to roll on as more and more information is slowly trickling out for the game. I know we all still have lots of questions, but in today's video, I want to focus on the story, the lore, and some of the biggest mysteries that we do not know yet about Hogwarts Legacy. To me, it all starts with number one here. What did the main character survive? This could indeed be the event that kicks off the game. Is it some sort of goblin attack? Is it perhaps the sudden emergence of the power of our character? Because we still don't know exactly how our character ties into this so-called ancient magic and what exactly we can do. But in the developer interview and even in the blog post they posted after the Sony State of Play, it's clear that this is something significant and something that we are meant to speculate about. They even go as far as saying that our character starts out a little bit like Harry at Hogwarts. They're kind of a celebrity because they survived something. I don't think it's going to be the killing curse. We know that Harry was supposedly the only one who had survived that. And of course, this game takes place well before that. Plus, even if that wasn't the case, it would just be kind of weird if it was the exact same thing. So I do think it's going to be something different. And I also wonder if we tragically lose our parents or lose our family at the start of the game, because it seems clear that Professor Fig is kind of acting as that Hagrid-like character who's introducing us to the wizarding world. And that leads us directly into number two. Why are we starting at Hogwarts as a fifth year? This is actually one of the things that some fans aren't too happy about because they want to do all 7 years. I get it, but I actually think Avalanche had a really good reason, at least internally, for wanting it to start at the 5th year, is because then they said that anything would be on the table. They wouldn't have to necessarily hold back, because if you're dealing with a character that's only 11 years old, then obviously there are some things that you just don't want to show that character going through in a game like this. But as a 5th year, a little bit older, a little bit more mature, so there are certainly more darker story elements that they can then explore. But that's the real world reason for this. What is the in-game reason for this? I don't know that we ever have anything like this in canon before. We've had characters getting expelled that we can look to who don't finish Hogwarts. And then I'm sure there are situations where characters may transfer between Durmstrang and Hogwarts. Now, there are a couple of popular theories around this. One of them is that perhaps we were homeschooled and that our parents didn't want us necessarily going to school and they just trained us at home instead of going to a wizarding school. But maybe it's something even deeper than that. Maybe there's a reason that our character was marked long ago as being an individual who does not need to attend Hogwarts. Perhaps there was a fear that our character is going to have the potential to grow into some great villain, maybe because of who their family is, but more on that later. Number 3, what ancient magical abilities will we unlock? These first 3 here, I think they're all going to tie very closely together. Why does our character survive? Why are we starting as a 5th year? And then what are these ancient magical abilities that apparently our character is the only one who has? At one point in the lead up for this game, they described it as our character having the unique ability to perceive and master ancient magic. But then at the PlayStation State of Play, they talked about Ranrok actually wanting to use our character to get some of these abilities for himself. So to me, this says that it is something that can be transferred in a way. I talked about this a little bit in another video, but I think what it's going to boil down to is that our character has this ability to somehow see and maybe even manipulate ancient magic to unlock certain areas of the wizarding world. We see a little bit of this with Professor Fig when it seems like our character is kind of putting their hand on the wall and they have the ability to open these portals or even close these portals, I guess, in some cases. So I think it's more a power of detection. And that is one of the reasons that Ranrok thinks, okay, he needs to get to us so we can show him where they are. And then once we sort of unlock the area, wherever it may be, then he can go in and get the power. I think there are actually going to be multiple powers hidden throughout the world that only our character has the ability to get into. Now, 2 of these, they actually show a little bit in the trailer. They show us calling lightning down from above. And then I personally think that the little dash ability that looks very similar to the Death Eaters apparating from the Harry Potter movies, which for those of you who read the books know, that's not how it was supposed to be. Only Voldemort had the ability to fly, and then apparition was totally different. So I don't know if they're going to be tying that sort of teleport ability to what we already have seen in movies, or if it's going to be connected to the ancient magic and these special powers that only our character can unlock. Let's move on to number 4, though. We've already touched on Ranrok a little bit, and I want to know, is Ranrok actually the main villain? That's certainly how the trailer seemed to be building it up, is that Ranrok is leading this Goblin Rebellion and that he is the main villain of the game. We see him having that argument with Rookwood, and Rookwood appears to indicate that there is something Ranrok isn't telling him, which to me puts Ranrok in sort of the position of power there. He's the one kind of setting that up.
Who is this child? Are you not telling me?
But to me, it would not be a good Wizarding World story without some sort of twist. I cannot see Ranrok being the only villain. Maybe he is indeed the main villain. I personally hope there's someone else kind of behind the curtain pulling this and we actually come to sort of understand Ranrok before the game is over. But I do think there is a decent chance he isn't the main villain, which I think would be fascinating. For number 5, we talked about Rookwood a bit there. Does he work for the Ministry? As soon as all of these names started coming out, fans of course started looking for connections to the original Harry Potter series, and Rookwood is a name we all jumped on right away. Of course, Augustus Rookwood was a Death Eater who served Lord Voldemort. Now, in the First Wizarding War, he was a spy who worked as an unspeakable in the Department of Mysteries. He would later be imprisoned at Azkaban, and then of course he was part of that mass breakout, and he went and served as a Death Eater again. But when it comes to unspeakables, there's really not a lot we know. Department of Mysteries, of course, a lot of that even went unsolved in the original series. A lot of fans wanted to know what is behind the veil, and those were some questions that were kind of just left unanswered. Now we can look to a quote from Arthur Weasley in the books where he says, "From the Department of Mysteries, top secret, no idea what they get up to." And that of course is talking about unspeakables. Remember, Arthur worked at the Ministry of Magic, so if anybody would have a chance of knowing, it would possibly have been him. We do know that some of them studied love in the Love Chamber, also time in the Time Chamber. There was another one called the Thought Chamber, and then of course the Death Chamber, which is where Sirius Black fell into the veil and died. Now, what does our Rookwood in Hogwarts Legacy have to do with all this? I don't know. I think he's almost certainly a descendant, or hold on, I guess it would be ancestor of Augustus Rookwood. And personally, I think it would be a really interesting tie-in if he is actually on the inside with the Ministry. He certainly seems to be a shady character in the trailer, but again, these trailers can easily manipulate us and we could be looking at a twist in the game. All right, let's move on to number 6, and I want to know which Weasleys will we meet at Hogwarts? Now, I point you back to the PlayStation blog post, not the most recent one, but the one that came out after that Sony State of Play. There was a line that said, "You may even come across some familiar names like a Weasley or two." So I think we could just about take it to the bank. There are going to be Weasleys in this game. Now that we know the date, we know the rough time frame of this, we can kind of work our way backwards and try and figure out who could these Weasleys be. Then again, we do not know all the Weasleys. There were certainly quite a few of them, but I think it's likely that we could be meeting the father or maybe the uncles of Septimus Weasley, who was born in approximately 1910. Now, Septimus is the father of Arthur Weasley. And the reason I say that we may meet his father or uncles is because it seems likely to me that they would be most likely to be male children, as it was a big deal when Ginny was born, because they said she was the first female Weasley in several generations. Now again, they've got some wiggle room there. It doesn't definitively say the exact timeline of when we had female versus male Weasleys born, but if they really stick to the canon hardcore, then it could very well be the father and or uncles of Septimus. Number 7, I can't wait to find out more about the curse involving Sebastian Sallow and his family. This is something that they outright said in the trailer. They said he is dealing with a family curse. So is it him affected? Is it someone else in his family? It seems like he is trying to find something for his sister in the trailer. A lot of people are speculating that could potentially be a werewolf. I think that's a possibility. I'll throw another one out there. What about a blood malediction? This is actually what happened with Nagini. Nagini was a maledictus that suffered from a blood malediction that ultimately made her transform into a large snake and permanently into a large snake. Now, of course, this was kind of added after the fact of the original canon, and we learned about it through Fantastic Beasts, but still, I do think we have to consider it as another possibility, among others. This could be quite a few things here. This could be something completely new that they invent for the game. I think that's certainly some room where they have that creative freedom they can explore a bit. And now, speaking of Sebastian, let's get to number 8, because we know about the Gryffindor companion, we know about the Hufflepuff companion, but we did not see a Ravenclaw companion. So I want to know who is the Ravenclaw companion, and I'll even give you a bonus one here. Is there more than one companion for each house? It certainly seems like that's kind of how they were setting it up, at least in terms of this initial trailer that we saw for gameplay. But I don't know, I think it'd be a great surprise if they actually ended up having more than one companion per house. But when it comes specifically to the Ravenclaw one, I want to know why they held it back. And it makes me wonder if there's somebody that we would somehow recognize, or if there's somebody that is very integral to the story and they're just not ready to unveil them yet. I'm not really sure the reason, but I can't wait to find out who it is. Okay, when it comes to number 9, this one here could have major major ramifications for the overall game and how it plays out. And that question, is our character a descendant of Merlin? I gotta credit my buddy Expecto Go here. I believe he is the first one where I saw this. He's certainly not the only one who said it, but I gotta give a lot of credit to him for coming up with that theory. We know that Merlin is mentioned a number of times in the trailer. We see the name of Merlin on the window in Professor Binns' History of Magic classroom. We've had all this talk about ancient magic, and who is more ancient, of course, than Merlin, one of the most powerful wizards who ever lived, even in the Wizarding World universe of Harry Potter. I personally think Merlin would be a fun way to kind of bring in folks who aren't necessarily Harry Potter fans, who maybe they don't know the history of Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, but hey, Merlin, I recognize that name. Merlin is an incredibly famous wizard, even outside the world of Harry Potter, so I personally think it'd be fascinating if our character is a descendant of him, and that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier about why does our character start as a 5th year? What are the magical abilities that we unlock? Perhaps there was some sort of prophecy made about a descendant of Merlin and how they were potentially going to be the downfall of the whole wizarding world. I could certainly see that being a reason for the Ministry to maybe hide away this wizard and pretend that they don't know magic and hope that they never show any signs of magic. Now, if something like this were to happen, you could certainly see another group of wizards saying, hey, hold on. We can't take this prophecy as 100% truth. We're going to have to let this person choose for themselves, and we know that choice is going to play a big part in this game. So I think this theory is pretty close to spot on. I don't know if it's going to be exactly Merlin, but I definitely think that our character has some sort of special magical tie to a famous witch or wizard from the past. And speaking of famous witches and wizards, what about the headmaster or headmistress? That is number 10. Who will be the headmaster or headmistress in Hogwarts Legacy? I think it comes down to 3 possibilities, and I break it all down for you in the video on the right side of your screen now. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.